I know that's nice.
Well, yeah, thank you. Well, welcome everyone. My name is Hope McCutcheon, and I'm excited to host this June issue of Ce-2, Charlottesville Entrepreneurs and Espresso. Who of you all are here for the first time? I know I chatted with a couple of you guys that are James, Kelly, James, couple Jameses on here. Screen 2, Mercy. Okay. Kathy. Awesome. Well, glad to have you guys, since there are a couple of you guys that are new, and I'm familiar with some of you. I'll tell you the format. So first of all, Ce-2, Charlottesville Entrepreneurs and Espresso, has been going on since 2015. So what is that, 5-6 years running? And it's an event that is well attended, especially in person. I wonder if people are a little zoomed out in Zoom land, but we're talking about getting back in person or probably hybrid, something like that, in the fall, if not sooner. And we are sponsored, or rather hosted by CBIC, Charlottesville Business Innovation Council, which I'm a board member of, as well as CIC, Community Investment Collaborative. We have Carolina repping there. That's a great organization. And then another big impact organization is the Central Virginia Small Business Development Center, the SBDC. And we are sponsored by the Batten Institute at UVA. So lots of really great organizations. If you're on one of their newsletters, I know CBIC for sure sends out reminders every month, but make it a recurring event on your calendar, register on Eventbrite. And you can register, day of, even if you forget, and still get the link. I'm pretty sure up until it starts. But so we start with an early stage speaker. So an early stage company that they will share about their company, and then have an ask for the audience. And so that's where you have the opportunity to help them solve a barrier of growth and help them move forward. And that's actually a really unique, fun scenario. It's not a lot of times that you can hear a speaker and give them advice, and help them grow and participate. And then the second speaker we have is a more seasoned entrepreneur, usually a 15, 20 plus year entrepreneur that shares their crash and learn stories. So things that they've learned the hard way, those water cooler type stories that you, again, may not hear otherwise. And after they share, we open that up for Q&A. So you can get to know them a little bit more. Then we do announcements where you announce if your company is hiring or any upcoming events. And then finally, we end with breakout rooms with each of the speakers. So our startup will be in a room, and our crash and learn will be in a room. And then we have the main room open as well. And what that does is that simulates an in-person environment where you can go up and chat with the speaker afterwards. That's what we're doing there. And then we end at 10. So that's our format. So we will go ahead and get started with our early stage company. So our first speaker, her name is Esther Bobbin. And I will tell you that I have been trying to get Esther to speak for a long time. I think it was at Shift Enter that we first met, and I thought her company was so cool. And just the timing had to be right with her technology and whatnot. And so finally, the time is now. So I'm glad you all are going to be here to hear from her. But her company is called United by Chocolate. So very intriguing. And it may not be what you think, though. So I won't steal her thunder on that. But a little bit about Esther. She is spent the last 11 years before coming to Charlottesville in Seattle, so West Coast, and relocated all the way over here because she has family here on the East Coast. So she's been in Charlottesville about 3 years, and she knew she wanted to be in Charlottesville because she had this vision for her company. And Charlottesville has a growing artisan chocolate community, which some of you guys might be aware of. There's a couple of companies locally, and background before that in government contracting. And as far as education, went to JMU and then Thunderbird International for her international business MBA. And she is married with 2 kids, a 6 and 8-year-old, and a hound, some sort of hound, and has an awesome life. And I am excited to give Esther the floor.
Thank you. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited to be here. Yeah, if it's not the kids, it's normally my hound dog that comes busting in here. So apologize for that in advance. Yeah, I'm so thankful to be here. Charlottesville, I just have to say, has been an amazing entrepreneurial ecosystem, and so thankful to be here. I graduated from JMU, but I am like such a UVA fan now, and for all the support they've given me, and I'll mention that a little bit more down the road here. But the problem that I wanted to solve with United by Chocolate was the lack of education and information dissemination in the chocolate industry in the languages of producers. So this is a cacao pod, and this is what goes into making your chocolate. And most of the producers are not fluent in English, but most of the post-production and supply chain and innovation conferences occur in Europe and in the US in English. And after working in Seattle for many years in the chocolate industry and trying to help bring like about this change and bring more producers to conferences or making it available online, I noticed that there was a need for somebody to focus on that particular part of the industry. And so when I moved here to Charlottesville, I decided to make that my full-time mission. And one of the biggest barriers, as you guys can imagine, is the cost of simultaneous interpretation. Now that we've all been in Zoom, you may have seen like the translation function. And if you have an interpreter, you can pick a language and log into that. And so it's can be about like $2,000, sometimes even for just like an hour. And I started off thinking I'll just do it myself. It's a very friendly community. People in chocolate tend to be happy that they work in chocolate. And I would say, aside from wanting to make amazing chocolate, most artisan chocolate makers are all get into it to help the producers. So it was very easy to ask to videotape, and I would just take my iPhone and go to conferences and videotape. I failed to mention my mom's side of the family is from Peru, and I grew up speaking Spanish. My dad is from Canada, but speaks about 9 different languages. And so I just grew up always like assuming that things should be in a variety of languages and accessible. And so I started translating and doing the voiceovers in Spanish, and then quickly realized that it was very time intensive, very technical, especially when you're trying to dub over a fast New Yorker. And as you can tell, I talks pretty slowly. So I thought, okay, this isn't going to make the difference I want. I'm not going to be able to get like 1 video out a month, and I really want to make much more of an impact. So then I thought, surely there's technology. I come from a little bit of a technology background, and long time ago did some coding and implementation work. And so I thought, surely that exists. All the big boys are all working on it, Google, AWS, you name it. But it's actually, it's not ready to go for the level that the consumer needs. But I was able to get help from some students at Arizona State University and here at UVA. And actually we've been developing the technology for pre-recorded video actually works, and the live stream that the UVA team is working on is in production, but they're really close to completing it. So we're very proud of that. Along the way, we have done some beta testing and learned that there is still ways to go with training the computer and the voices to make it really ready to be used out in the market. And meanwhile, somebody from coffee approached me and said, well, we would love to be able to bring more translation to coffee as well. And that's when things kind of came full circle. And we've now started to look back into having human simultaneous interpretation and being able to bring these conferences and events together and partner with translation and interpretation companies to bring the price down. I kind of like to think of it like AAA, and they can be a trusted partner, and that's what we want to be. And wherever you are, that you can reach out to them, and they bring the tow trucking companies together, and we would bring the interpretation translation companies together and be that facilitator for NGOs, departments of agriculture, other industry organizations, and really help facilitate them to get their programs translated. And so we are actually planning on having our first fundraiser and conference this September, and that will give us the platform to be able to talk a little bit more to the industry and talk to them about what we want to do, also get content and topics out there to producers. I've been fortunate to go through the CIC program, which I'm also super thankful for, and ICAP through the Virginia Small Business Department. And through that journey and interviews with producers, they also have a lot of interest in learning about agricultural best practices. So we want to bring a variety of topics. And this will also be an awesome opportunity for the UVA students to, on the back end, be able to test their technology in real time. And all the money from the conference and the sponsorships will go to a grant fund that will then go to pay for simultaneous interpretation for conferences that don't offer that. And then hopefully once in-person events start happening, to also be able to provide the platform to put those in-person events online so that they can be accessible to producers internationally. And so with that would be our first time raising money and getting together a committee and to put out these grants. And that's where my ask comes in. This would be the first time that United by Chocolate would have like a formalized committee besides our board of directors to implement this grants program. And it's not something that I have experience with. And so I wanted to ask about your experiences and being able to, get a balanced group together that is able to represent different sides of the industry and producers, and how to make it transparent, and as well make it easy, because a lot of the folks that we want to facilitate this for, especially in countries of origin where they grow cacao, they might not be as organized as like the more formal companies in the north, and we still want to make this accessible to them. So we don't want to make like the process of getting these funds super complicated. And so that's where my ask is about how to formulate these a grants committee and best practices around that. Happy to take any questions.
Awesome. So thank you so much for sharing, Esther. So her question is around the establishment of a grants committee, basically, and does anyone have experience with that, or anyone have insight for her? Maybe people haven't worked around that. Anyone been on a committee like that before?
Yeah, Esther, I have some people I can introduce you to that would probably be very helpful. I am personally, there's administering grants, but it sounds to me like yours is kind of like a larger scope than simply getting a grant for a project kind of thing.
Yeah, and you might also like scholarships or stipend. The goal is not for us to take over interpretation, and actually would like to see more conferences and industry organizations take on that responsibility. So even if we're, little by little kind of weaning off of us, that, that's actually the goal. So, yeah.
So you would be more or less administering the grant. In other words, deciding who you get a lump sum, so to speak, and you're deciding who should be getting funds and that kind of thing.
Yeah, we've also gotten a lot of feedback around that we've been helpful on the technology side. And also, a lot of conferences happen on Zoom, but producers, their most popular systems are WhatsApp and Facebook. And so we've been helping to live stream it to Facebook. And so also helping these organizations that are doing conferences at a large scale think of how that they can make it more accessible technology-wise.
Okay. Yeah, I'll send you a note. I know a few people in town might be able to help you.
Cool, thanks. And in the breakout room, I'd also welcome if anybody has any ideas of partners that doesn't necessarily need to be in chocolate, but are interested in expanding education, especially with machine learning and AI, and might find it beneficial to partner for this conference. I would welcome those ideas and thoughts too.
So who's going to be attending the conference in September?
It's focused on producers. We definitely, it's going to be in English and Spanish, and then either pending French or Indonesian, depending what strong partner we get on that side. So the 3 languages to start, focused on producers, but we definitely want to make sure that we have like importers, exporters, chocolate makers, and open up those doors. Part of what we want here is to make the voices of the producers heard, because they don't get to be speakers a lot of times in these events. And so getting like a firsthand seat to what their thoughts are instead of like secondhand.
This isn't probably.
Oh, sorry, it kind of cut out there, Greg.
May have alluded. This isn't done. It hasn't been done anyway. We need the producers in like this.
Hey,
I'm
Craig,
sorry.
I think there might be something over your mic, maybe.
Oh,
The
you know
sound.
what? Let me change my mic. I'm so sorry.
No problem.
He said it sounds like no one else has done this before, basically. Is that
Yeah,
what you said, Craig?
Can you hear me better now?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, what you're trying to do, it sounds like hasn't been done. The producers, people have not gotten to know the producers in this way before.
right. It tends to be, done like either agricultural education in country. And I have to say, actually, a lot of their in country, like agricultural departments have done a great job in terms of farming practices. But I think also because everybody's so spread out and disparate, it's hard to get that education out there. And so actually the goal is to partner with co-ops for this conference to like bring producers into the co-ops to also be able to see the conferences. But in terms of translated conferences, no, there's a recent one that just happened, the Cacao and Chocolate Summit. And we actually were able to help them with their live streaming. But with COVID last year, they went online. It used to be in person in Ecuador. And they went online for their conference and did translate it to English. So that's the first that I heard. And then of course, there's like really large, or, like the UN has their subcommittees, and those will have translation, but they tend to be like higher level executives in those conversations. Yeah.
Interesting.
Mhm. I see Graham has his hand up.
Does he? Okay, Graham, thank you.
Yeah, quick question. So prior to the people that you're bringing in to participate in these conferences, who would be there and why?
What do you mean by prior to the conference? I'm sorry.
Prior to you welcoming grassroots producers into the conferences, because you're breaking that barrier to entry.
Mhm.
I'm wondering who are the people there, and why are they there? And now that the new folks are there, does it change the dynamic? Is there something for the new folks, or are they stepping into something that is really designed for other people who are already there and they're getting value out of it, but it's not really made for them?
Sure. So I would say yes, that it would. Right now, it's not created necessarily with them in mind. So it would be a disruption. Currently, where I see prior to COVID, most of the events were in person, and so I see maybe somebody. Okay, they muted themselves. So when producers did come to events, it tend to be sponsored in some way, shape, or form through USDA, with that money funneled through like a USAID and then to countries. And then those countries then would sponsor, normally through a co-op or like Catholic Relief Services or something like that, and bring up a few producers to the events. Which was great. And a lot of times there, they were able to connect with chocolate makers, sell their beans. But what I witnessed over time is it either tended to be the same individuals over and over again, or if there were new individuals, they didn't come prepared and didn't seem to have been able to like gain previous knowledge from the participants that had come before them. And so there was like this restart that had to happen each time. And then as you can imagine, the high cost of coming to the US and visas and all that. And then if they pretty much had to be bilingual. And sometimes they weren't bilingual. And so we would try to pair them up with volunteers, but it was always kind of like this messy connection that would happen last minute.
But the conference is primarily about matching buyers and sellers, or primarily about education?
Primarily about education. And so you hit on a really good point there. So it's about education, but the focus for a producer when they come to these festivals, their primary focus is to get introduced to chocolate makers and try to make a connection so that they can sell their beans.
Yep.
And so it would be very common for them to come with like a suitcase of beans and then like be showing them and trying to show. So there isn't a very smooth progress for that. Something that we've toyed around with the idea is, oh gosh, there's a platform that does this and I'm forgetting what it is. But it's like, it's Hopin. I don't know if anybody's done it. It's like kind of speed dating Zoom, and seeing how maybe we can put translators or interpreters inside an event like that so that they can connect with makers, because that would be very valuable for them. Yeah.
Esther, one of the things you called out was that if you can get the people who are putting on these conferences to kind of take up this mantle, obviously that would go a long way and kind of solve your problem at the starting point, right? Like go upstream a little bit. And so I'm curious, what is the elevator pitch or the value prop that you've articulated for the people who are putting on these conferences? And maybe after we can kind of hear that quick pitch or kind of the narrative that you're using, maybe we can think about ways to finesse, because kind of the first thing that comes to my mind, and especially since you pointed out that many of these are coming or kind of under the umbrella of a government organization. I mean, there's so much conversation right now about equity and trying to uncover and break down, historical lines of power and power disparities. And it seems like this would be a natural place to either weave that into the conversation or to kind of hone in on, to Graham's point, like what do the existing participant pool, what do they have to gain by this additional participant pool? And if it's about, again, kind of like making the connections and potentially, like finding a more competitive source, like it seems like there's an opportunity there to do some compelling storytelling to get what you want.
Definitely. And I think I could definitely use some refinement of that. I would say the main pitch is for them to be able to demonstrate that they're being good citizens in this ecosystem of artisan chocolate. The big selling point is a lot of these artisan chocolates, they're selling like $10, $12 bars of chocolate. And so the consumers that they're going for are people that really want to know, like soup to nuts, where this cacao is coming from. It's making a difference in these lives. And the storytelling aspect that you're talking about has to be woven into the bars. And the conferences themselves are trying to also demonstrate that they're being good citizens. And most of these conferences are like a subset of another organization, or maybe a chocolate company or something like that. It's not, tends to not be like their main company, if you will, just having that conference. So for me, it's about telling them like, all right, you talk, so much about supporting the producers, but the information's actually not getting to them. So this is, an avenue that we can bring them into the fold of the conversation. But that might not be as compelling.
No, I mean, I think it's a great place to start. We often talk about like taking people on the emotional ride of the story. And it sounds like you've got like what should be the reality of what is, and a way to correct kind of the what is, the down in the pit, but maybe potentially the piece you're missing is then what will happen if they answer your call to action. Like what's going to be the happily ever after, or the rise again, that again kind of spurs the action. So
one thing that I'm hoping this conference in September will provide will be those like raised hands of producers that say, okay, yes, this has made a difference. This is the information I want. And hopefully with that, I can bring like those stories to these platforms and industry organizations.
Awesome.
Hey, Esther,
Great.
this is Jamie Watt. Can I ask a question, or maybe give a point to ponder?
Yes, please.
Would it be possible to also interpret this as part of bringing in an agile business sense into the production of the chocolate, in terms of bringing the producer in as part of the team who's actually working on making that product more, like you said, more niche, more hands-on, and more understandable, so that way your consumer and also the middleman who's actually manufacturing the chocolate can say that they have a value proposition in providing this interpretation, or somehow sponsoring this interpretation.
Oh, that's really interesting. So like being a vehicle for farmer producers to like be partners with the chocolate making companies. That's really interesting.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. There should be ways for them to economize processes and also, produce a higher quality product if they are working together.
Definitely. Something that I hope that producers gain, but I've said from the beginning, I want this to be like a platform for information exchange. I don't want to, be this, I don't want to push down ideas of artisan chocolate. This actually part of the reason we went nonprofit was to bring everybody to the table, whether it's like Hershey's, Mars, and any and everybody. But one of the things I hope is that producers learn how they in country can keep more of the value within their economies, because I think that will really help rise up their communities for sure.
Thank you so. Oh, go ahead, Duane.
Can I ask one? And I'd like to ask a question. I'm fascinated by what you're doing. my assumption is that you've gone nonprofit and you're trying to solve a problem that has been around since God mission in this world. And it seems to me like, if I'm understanding what your pitch is you're trying to find out a way to simplify and be more effective at communicating between all the various participants in the supply chain of chocolate.
Definitely, yes.
Okay, and I think AI is coming, but I think it's way behind.
I agree.
I find that I am an international business lawyer. I do most of my work for companies that are outside the U.S. And I find the Chinese come in with their Google Translate with you. You sit and you have a conversation. They look at you and look at their Google Translate, and it probably does a reasonable job.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's one-on-one, and
Right.
I'm not sure where it's going. I have a client that's in this business. They adapt. Their business is putting together beta-ing any changes Facebook would make or Microsoft would make into 278 languages.
Okay.
Okay, so setups in those countries, they take whatever it is they need to know, and then they go and beta these with locals. They hire locals,
Yeah.
and they then sort out whether they got words that don't work. As you know, being an international linguist, many words mean different things in different places. And that's kind of one of the things they do. It's very, very expensive to do.
Yeah.
And the AI solution would be great, but I don't even have any idea where that is in that path. The translators have gotten good enough for me. For example, I can take a legal document and stick it on my computer and translate it to Chinese. And I'm relatively certain I'm 93%. Not bad.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Portuguese, European language is even better.
Mhm.
So I don't know how that's coming at a point in time. I know I'm a member of the Mormon Church.
Mhm.
We put it in a conference that goes to 178 countries.
Mhm.
178 countries. They have a whole building full of translators. The conference is going on. The brethren are giving their talks. These guys are sitting with hoods over their head, translating them, and they become the voice. It's kind of interesting. I lived in Brazil working with the church for 3 years. And the voice of the church in Brazil is this translator in Salt Lake City who's translating the conference talks. Are you with me?
Yep.
So I mean, I think you're 100% correct. The only thing out there right now is live translation that really works. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And inexpensive.
It is. It's so expensive. What's interesting is that, I set out to work with cacao, but I didn't realize that the strategy of like working in machine learning in a very niche segment was actually very beneficial because we could build dictionaries with very specific terms and conditions. And not to get too much off topic, but I think that is how AI is going to end up being successful, is by these companies that are extremely very niche, and that like we use AWS, but we use like a German company for the voices because they're much more precise. And so like each piece of the machine learning puzzle, I think, is going to end up being put together by different niche companies, and that's going to bring up the accuracy. So, but as you said, I think there's still ways to go. So
I think you've bitten off a big chunk of beef to chew here.
yes, I didn't. I thought cacao and translation. I didn't realize I was going to start building technology. But it's been a great learning
Well,
experience.
you're a linguist at heart. You're interested in translation and how people communicate. I understand exactly what that is.
Yeah, and working with the students at UVA has been wonderful.
I say good luck to you, and I think the solution's out there somewhere. And it certainly would be wonderful to walk around with a pair of earphones that automatically translate. And that's what they're trying to do with Google goggles. You know what I mean? That you can
Yes.
travel in a foreign country, you put your goggles on, and people are talking, and you're looking at your goggles and it's telling what they're saying. I
Yes.
haven't tried them yet, but I'm very fascinated by
Me
all of
too.
this.
Me too.
So,
I would love
I
to.
wish you the best of luck.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Esther. That's actually a great transition because Duane is our crash and learn. So I might tee him up with that. But I really appreciate you sharing about your company, United by Chocolate. And if you don't mind in the chat throwing your contact information, and if anyone wants to get in touch with Esther has ideas after today, please do reach out to her. And she'll, of course, be in the breakout room around 9:30 as well. So now I'd love to introduce Duane Zobrist, our Crash and Learn speaker. So a little bit about Duane. Kind of fascinating fact is that he spoke for 12 years at the first entrepreneurship program at the collegiate level ever in LA, and did that consistently. And so has a wealth of knowledge in entrepreneurship, mergers and acquisitions, startups, etc. But he did big law in LA for 35 years before coming to Charlottesville back in '97 because he bought a farm here. So for 50 plus years has been practicing law in this business entrepreneur space, and wanted to get some relief from the smog and taxes of LA. So that's what made him search for a farm over here in Charlottesville. And he continues to practice law here. He is fluent in Spanish and Portuguese. And another fun fact is that he's learning Chinese as his pandemic pastime. What are you doing? I'm just kidding. So definitely has a passion for being a lawyer and making an impact. So I would love to give the floor to Duane. And then, like I said, we'll open up for Q&A at the end for him.
Thanks, Hope, very much for asking me to come today. It's always nice to have these moments that give us time to reflect on what we've been doing for the last 50 years and deciding how you can translate that into knowledge that others can use and learn about. And I guess the important thing I would say is that the caution in selecting one's passion and what one intends to chase is directly correlative with the success level. I have had the privilege of working mostly with successful operations, even though they weren't successful when I met them. I was doing some work for a client in my early days, and this client had done several entrepreneurial things, but was basically employed by a chemical company. And the company saw a need to do something. And so he left and started his company on very much of a shoestring. And he was in the polystyrene business. And he's the guy that came up with McDonald's clam, with the polystyrene clams that they were using before environmentalists kicked them out and made them go back to paper. And very, very interesting company, but the company struggled and was having really, really, really tough times. And you never know when the break is going to come, because that's a capital intensive business. And you're competing against everybody out there who's trying to figure out how are you making these polystyrene packaging that so many people use today, that everybody makes. But they were really the innovators that came up with it with McDonald's. And right on top of that, they were hit with the Arab oil embargo. We're talking the 70s. Nobody in this room probably remembers it, but I remember it. It was a very, very difficult time to get gas in your car. And you'd spend 3 or 4 hours. We had debates in the law firm was, how do we bill our time that we're sitting there waiting to get gas so we can go service our clients, you know what I mean? And it was a very, very difficult time. Also, at the same time, we were being hit with a barrage of environmental legislation. In the law at that period of time, a company could sell its company and they could pass on, they could in effect have the purchaser assume the environmental liability. Under the environmental acts subsequent to that time, you can't give it away. If you've operated a plant and you sell it to somebody, you can get an indemnity, but you're still on it. So in that point in time, all of the big polychemical companies, polystyrene companies wanted out. And my guy just happened to be the guy that said, I'll assume all your environmental liabilities. And he took he took basically $5 billion worth of environmental liabilities. Didn't have 2 nickels to rub together, but he was a live body with a company that had some business, and we were successful in basically acquiring about $180 million worth of assets for the assumption of the liabilities. And I kind of looked at my client and I said to him, I have an idea what you're doing? And he said, I know exactly what I'm doing. There's no way I can pay him. And he says, my view is you were never going to have to make good on it. And so he took over and started running those companies, and it's built that into an international chemical companies now, multi-billionaire. And it's one of those success stories where you start as a young lawyer with a client with an idea and no money. And that's where most of us start in life. I'm at the other end of the spectrum now, thank goodness. I've been doing this for 50 odd years, and I've seen lots of success. But it was one of those kind of experiences that could have been a crash and burn. And it was not. You tend to adjust what you're going to do to the circumstances. And if you have the right team, if you have the right passion, and you get a break or two, you're going to be successful. And my success has come greatly through helping clients make their businesses successful. And I am basically very, very choosy about who I work for. I've been very careful. To me, I've always wanted to put the interests of my client ahead of my own. And I've not done any venture capital or new startups if I didn't have a passion for what they were doing and was able to see a way through. And also, you judge your client by the fact is this client going to be successful? And I think that is the real key to it. So I have spent the last 50 odd years representing a significant number of companies that have gone through all stages, right from the startup stage all the way to the IPO stage and beyond. And it's been a wonderful experience for me. And my advice to people starting their own companies is be very, very careful about selecting good lawyers and having good people with you. We're watching a drama show heading out in Los Angeles with Elizabeth, I think her name's Holmes Theranos, who literally went out and pitched her company, and she's being prosecuted criminally because she lied. And so it's really, really important that you find levels of integrity and you deal with people's integrity, maintain your own integrity, because the good professionals will not tolerate people that don't have integrity. You won't find good lawyers, you won't find good accountants. They're going to be with you and support you as you build your businesses if you don't have a very high level of integrity. And I think that's kind of the way I see it from my end of the spectrum. And you can see exactly how things happen. And you realize that in every evolution of a company, there's a point of where it is challenged, and it's always sudden make or break. You never know where the break is going to come, but you have to aggressively attack the mountain and find the break by your strategy. And I look at myself more as a strategist than a lawyer. I think that there's a strategy for success in virtually everything that I touch. I'm entrepreneurial by nature. I don't work for anybody. I've never worked for anybody. When I was in big law, I mean, I was the guy bringing in the business. So I pretty much worked for myself and gave lots of work for other lawyers. And in the law business, it's interesting. Very few lawyers can bring in enough work to keep themselves busy. So those of us that have that skill are very much in demand. And working in Los Angeles for 35 years was a wonderful experience for me. I saw it all. I saw everything from movie deals to you name it. I saw it, and it was a wonderful period of time in that period of my life. I did put together the first the company that made the first dialysis machine that could do dialysis at your home. We put that together and sold it to a major company. Lots and lots of challenges in that little company, and watching the sweat and tears of the people as they did it. And that machine today is now owned by a big international company, and they have thousands of millions of them around the world helping people with kidney problems. And it all came from an idea, one person sitting in a little shop in a little community out in the sticks in Southern California. And who came to me, and we were able to figure out how to do it and how to get it in front of the right people and get it into the marketplace. So I think that the important thing is being very, very careful what you pick and making sure that you're not biting off more than you can actually chew. And I think every company hits that inflection point where they're wondering, have I picked the right business? Because Stephen Covey used to say, you spend all your life climbing the ladder, and by the time you're halfway up the wall, you realize you picked the wrong ladder. And it's important to get straight in your lines and figure out exactly what it is you're going to do and how you're going to do it. A couple of other stories that I can tell you that are wonderful. In the mid 70s, I met a Mexican entrepreneur, came to Los Angeles looking for a business lawyer that spoke Spanish. There weren't very many in those days with big law firms. And we started to work with him. And in those days, they were making tortillas like this, you know what I mean? And he had this vision. He came here, he had a small corn mill in Mexico. And he came here with the objective of selling Doritos to PepsiCo, so that they could flour, so they could make the Doritos. Because the way they make Doritos even today, they take their corn, they put it in big vats, they cook it, and they grind it, and that's their shtick. Is how they sell them. To this day, they've never sold any corn. They don't make their Doritos with corn flour. They mill their own corn in their own shops. In the meantime, my guy came here with this little with a carload of corn flour, and he couldn't sell it. He had invested all of his money really to get this up here, and he wanted to find a way to get in this market. And he basically said, well, if the market's not interested in the product I have, I'll make my own market. And he decided he was going to start making tortillas. Interesting stuff in tortillas. And that the business in tortillas was the same as everybody else. They had little tiny hand machines that they would make the tortillas with. It was an artisanal task. If you wanted tortillas, you go to your little tortillero down on the corner. He would give you your tortillas, and he would be up at 2 o'clock in the morning grinding his corn so they could make his tortillas. So he bought a small tortilla factory and had come up with some technology to automate making tortillas, corn tortillas. And he had a little machine that you put on the floor, and it would make a dozen tortillas maybe every 5 minutes. And when you push that up, it goes blah, 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 blah. And at great expense and great cost, this man came and he worked and he hired people. They expanded in Mexico, and they basically today have automated an industry. It's called Mission Tortillas. I've been their outside general counsel since 1976 when they came to the US. And they're now in 119 countries. They have 100 and some odd plants, and they own 80% of the tortilla market in the world. And it's because they automated an industry that was not automated, and they figured out how to do it. And the story goes on because my grandson just graduated from Brigham Young University in their program in manufacturing engineering. They have never used trained engineers in their manufacturing there, and he is now working for this company in their technology department, where they're starting to apply all of the new technology to their product lines. And for those of you who like Chipotle, we are the exclusive supplier to all of Chipotle's products because of the quality and because of the organic nature and no GMOs. So you can see how a little company with someone with a vision. And I have to tell you that the man that started this company had a 6th grade education, and he had the vision of building this company. And now it's one of the most powerful groups in Mexico. They even own a $350 billion bank, same family. And it's been really, really defining for my career to work with them. And I've told many people I'm just nothing but a tortilla lawyer. And all of that experience obviously builds to where you have experience to do other situations. Back in the 70s, any of you from California might know who Pollo Loco is, the crazy chicken. There's a bunch of crazy Mexicans that came up with this idea in Mexico. to do chickens, and they started doing a non-fried chicken. So they cooked their chicken on grills and not fry them in deep oil. And competition is actually Kentucky Fried Chicken. And they had a very great success in Mexico. KFC was there and was doing very well, but they were doing better. They had opened about 100 stores in Mexico. And their slogan was, if the colonel made chicken like we make chicken, the colonel would be a general. And that's kind of catchy, but it's kind of corny. But they came to Los Angeles and opened one store in MacArthur Park, which is a highly Hispanic area there, and invested about, I don't know, maybe $80,000-$90,000 in getting this chicken cooking store going. And their stick was selling a whole chicken with a dozen tortillas and with a pot of beans and a pot of rice and Mexican salsa. They were selling for like $10. Maybe it's a little less. I think it's even less. I think it was like $8.95. And they opened this store and it stormed the community. It just went crazy. And they had people coming out their ears. They were lined up for hours to get their chickens. And they sold $240,000 worth of chickens in their first month. Well, these guys had absolutely no idea what they were doing. And so they said, gee, we need to get this business going up here. And they were a very strange bunch of people, because part of the beauty of their plan was the way they cooked their chicken. They used a fruit-based basting marinating sauce that they put on the chicken before they cooked them. And obviously their chicken is absolutely fabulous. They started doing their little jingles on TV. And the first thing I know, by the time they found me, they were in deep trouble. They had decided they were going to franchise, and they had taken $50,000 deposits from 100 people and spent the money on other stuff. They had these people out there wondering what they were going to do. They had gone out and leased all kinds of spaces. And interestingly enough, in Mexico, any space is a good one because there are no spaces. So they were basically out renting any place they could find 2,000 square feet in any strip mall, whether it's in the back or the front or whatever. And they didn't even think about what signage they had, what parking they had, because in Mexico, that's not an issue. And so all of a sudden they're out there trying to build this company. They've got 18 franchisees. They've got 18 sites. They're in trouble with all the franchisors. And they decided that they better do something about it. And it was an interesting combination, because we had a very wealthy partner from Mexico that was the guy that took Tyson style huge chicken farms and put them in Mexico. He was the first one. And he was supplying like 60-70% of the store-bought chicken in Mexico. And these guys partnered with him because they needed somebody with chickens when they started their businesses down there. And I'll never forget sitting with them all, and they're all saying, what are we going to do? You know, we've got all this money that we've taken and we've spent it. We've got all these people wanting their franchises. The franchises we've got are all fighting with each other. What are we going to do about it? And I picked up the phone and called a friend of mine that was the president of Denny's. Denny's at the time, you know, Denny's restaurants, they had just done a chicken project, spent millions of dollars trying to have Uncle Jed fried chicken because they wanted to get into the chicken business. And it was an absolute disaster. And from that phone call, I went and met with the president of Denny's. And he handed me a piece of paper with a number on it. The number was almost shocking to me, a very large number. And he said, no negotiations, we'll buy all your technology and we'll buy the name because we think this is really got to go somewhere. And they had, at the time, they had a whole bunch of donut shops called Winchell's Donuts, 24-hour operations, small operations in all kinds of communities. You know, the good ones made $8,000 or $9,000 a month. Bad ones made $3,000 or $4,000 a month. And they thought they would maybe convert all those into Pollo Loco stores where people would come buy a lot of chicken. And so, interestingly enough, as we got into the transaction and finalized the transaction, my clients were very satisfied because they basically sold the rights to the US, and then they became partners with Denny's for the worldwide expansion of Pollo Loco. And the international has given them hundreds of times more money than they got from the US rights. But on the other hand, they had the right to take all of Denny's developed technology and apply it to their stores in Mexico. I think they now have about 400 stores in Mexico and are doing very well. But I think the interesting thing about this, and I will never forget, when the deal closed, we're sitting there and we're talking about the deal. It's all done, what they're going to do with it, et cetera, and so on. And I found it quite fascinating that 4 o'clock in the morning, we're trying to get it closed. And my clients, the Mexican guys, are sitting out there pitching quarters against the wall, biding their time, seeing who could win the most quarters off each other while they're closing a multi-million-dollar transaction. But when it came down, I asked the president of Denny's, I said, I'd really like to know how you came up with this and how this happened, where you were. He said, we need a chicken product. We know it's got a lot to do, a long way to go. And you called just at the right time because we were just thinking about this. We didn't know what to do. We were watching the newspaper about this magnificent Pollo Loco and seeing all the news on the big lines around the stores, et cetera, and so on. We thought we need to get in touch with those people. And he said, I had no idea you were even involved. So when you called me, it was just like, how did that happen? And so we did the transaction. And then I asked him 2 questions. I said, why would you buy all of it? Remember, they bought the liabilities, they bought everything about the company. So we had these 100 franchisees out there that put 50 grand down that had to be taken care of. We had 18 franchisees that were operating that were all a mess. And they made it very simple. They just bought them all out. Got rid of them. They didn't want to do any franchise. They were going to do all company operations. And I said, why did you decide to buy this? This is, well, we think it's a healthy product. We think it's going to really do well. It's far in excess of anything we've seen or anything we've tried to do. And then he said something even more important. He said, you guys just do some things that we think are really smart. I'd like to know what is that yellow liquid that you pour on your chickens when you're cooking. Because he said, we think that's what makes the chicken so good. And I said, really? And bottom line, it was yellow colored water, because the Mexicans realized that you pour water on chickens to keep them from flaming up. They colored it so it looked like it was something else they were pouring on them so that they could keep the flames down so the chicken didn't burn. But just simple things like that, just ideas that came up with people, gave them the opportunity to make a lifetime choice. The family is very wealthy now. They're doing very, very well. We're good friends. And just one of those kind of deals that could have been a crash and burn. At the moment when they told me, sell it and get anything you can for it, just get us out of liabilities. We don't want anything to do with doing business in the United States. And there we go. So it just took that thing, and it's those inflection points in every business that turn the businesses and turn them around the corner and take them where to an end where you never know where they're going to come up. And I think it's really important. I think one of the other things that's important to keep in mind too, as you build your businesses and build your ideas, is protect your technology. NDAs just don't work. I'll be candid with you. I've been practicing law for more than 50 years. I've never litigated an NDA. I never know anybody has. And you really don't have it. Having an NDA is great. I think you need to have one just to test the integrity of the other side, but just don't tell them anything that is important. When I do a transaction, I'm doing a transaction right now where people know what our end product is, but they want to see the technology, and I'm not about to show them the technology until they've finished the transaction. So there are many techniques we use to get a transaction. We basically do we invent a transaction, and then we do diligence to that transaction. And if the numbers all come out and they decide they're going to buy it, then we let them see the technology once they pay. Because your technology is very valuable. You never know how valuable it is. But you look at the amount of litigation you're seeing going on in the phone industry right now. Everybody's suing everybody. Everybody thinks everybody's violating their patents. And it's a tough problem, because litigation is very expensive, and competitors use litigation to put you out of business. And that's something you want to avoid. And I have a client that people had worked for a company with some really good technology. The guys left and decided to start their own company. They consulted me. I held their hands through the process of their non-competes and their non-disclosure agreements, made sure that everything was correct before they thought about getting into business. So they sat on the sidelines for several years till I got that done, and then we went ahead and put the business together. And the business was doing very, very well. And all of a sudden, they became a threat to their prior employer, and we're talking 8 years later, the prior employer sues them for theft of their confidential information, et cetera, et cetera. Absolutely no patents involved, no nothing, just confidential information. And they hired the biggest, nastiest, meanest law firm in the country to sue them. And they were going to put them out of business. And fortunately for them, we had bought some IP insurance, which I told them they needed to have. I think it was important because I figured they would get sued by these guys no matter what, because these guys were the key to their business. And they made the best product in the industry, and these guys were going to be able to compete with them. So we got in that litigation. The other side said about $15 million suing our guys, and we got a complete victory. We didn't even have to go to court. We were able to win it on motions, and our clients came out without having to spend a dime because of their IP coverage that they had. And they're now competing, and they now have thousands of their machines in the marketplace, and they're going to be very, very successful. So it's those things that are really important, that you get good counsel, you get good professionals around you that really know what they're doing. And I will tell you, people like me in this business, we're far beyond lawyers. We know the law. All lawyers know the same stuff. They can read it. Okay, we all read the same cases, we read the same statutes, but we have our own way of working with them on our own strategies and how we're going to deal with them. And those strategies are what are important. And I'm a strong believer as a lawyer in believing in my client's strategies and figuring out how they can do it. I don't want to tell my client no. I want to tell you, here's how you can do it. And it's up to you whether you want to try and do it or not. But if you want to do it, you can get there, but there's how you have to do it. So I think that for having done hundreds of deals and managed lawyers, I've probably trained 150 young lawyers in my career, and they're all over the place now. It's nice to see them succeeding, doing the same thing that I taught them to do years ago. And that was kind of the good part of Big Law. I enjoyed Big Law by having lots of bright young lawyers around that I could train and I could work with. And I enjoy now having just a handful. I just have 8 now, which is enough to do the work that's in our office here in Charlottesville. So I'd be happy to take questions. I think that it's time for questions now.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Duane. Hope, I think, had to scoot off for just a moment. Take care of her baby, but she'll be back. Love to transition the question and answers. Also want to let you know that I spent most of my life in Los Angeles, and I think ate El Pollo Loco by the ton.
Well, and I'm the guy that brought it up here from Mexico.
It used to be so tempting to go in and you could feed your whole family for like whatever, you know.
Well, and then when you could buy a chicken and 12 tortillas, it's got more. Denny's figured out how to raise the prices and how to keep the meals. So there were individual meals, not family meals, but it's great. It worked. And I agree with you. It's whenever I go to Los Angeles, there are 2 places I go: In-N-Out and Pollo Loco.
Of course. Yeah. And it's great to know the story behind that. So, yeah. So questions for Duane. It's very, it's fascinating. We get a lot of different speakers, but it's so interesting to hear about the legal aspect and some of the things that you have to think about early on. And also interesting kind of how these companies, which were so successful, as you kind of pointed out, were on the precipice of maybe failing.
Everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone.
Interesting.
I
So
see JD's hands. I'm here. This is Hope. I'm here listening, by the way.
Okay.
But I saw JD's hand up in case you didn't hear.
Yeah. Hey, Duane, thank you for speaking. I was just wondering your advice on finding a good lawyer. Is it like finding a co-founder where, you want to go on first dates and have discussions before you get involved, or is it just all recommendations from people? Or
Well, I have a very, many of my colleagues are probably offended when I say this, but the bottom line is Charlottesville has about 250 underemployed lawyers. And they get a hold of something and they work it to death. My view in hiring a lawyer, find the busiest guy you can. A good lawyer will never take more work than he can get out, and he will get your work done, and he will never have time to spend on your file that he doesn't need to spend in order to get the work done. And I have a different philosophy about lawyering. I don't look at the financial aspects. I don't have to work. You probably all figured that out by now. I practice law because I love to do it, and I don't know what I'd do if I wasn't doing this. I love the art of the deal. I love putting deals together. I love seeing them work, and it gives me great pleasure. But I find that you just have to be very, very careful with lawyers and how they bill their time, because there's no way of tracking it. You've got to rely on the lawyer and on his own integrity. And I find that if you get a real busy lawyer, he will never spend any time on your file that he doesn't have to spend. And you'll find that your bills will be very, very less. Good lawyers will also be very honest with you and give you very good estimates of what things are going to cost, because they're not cheap. Hourly rates are high. But on the other hand, I look at it from the standpoint that a lot of stuff I do isn't worth a dime every day, the process that I have to manage. But there are those moments when it's worth millions of dollars when I say the right thing at the right time in the right place, right? So finding lawyers is not easy. There's lots of lawyers that want to do this work. There's lots of lawyers that hang around CBIC. There are lots of them hanging around town. And I tend to get clients after somebody else has screwed them up. So I can only tell you, I won't name names, but we see a lot of sloppy legal work around town. And of course, I came from Los Angeles, where the motto of our firm was excellence is not rewarded here, it's expected. And that was how I was trained, and that's how I trained my lawyers. It's got to be right, and you can't make mistakes. You just can't make mistakes.
Esther, a follow-up question to that. You mentioned working with entrepreneurs that didn't have money to start off. So how do you structure that? Like, as a lawyer, do you become kind of part of that initial team?
Generally, with the clients that really have stuff that is going to go somewhere and they're lacking times, we will do it any number of ways. We just finished a project for a local entrepreneur, and basically we deferred being paid until his project closed. We knew it was going to close. I mean, that, but we work with clients that way. With this other client with the major litigation, they paid us a monthly budget as they were going on, and then when they got reimbursed from the insurance company, they paid us. Lawyers will work with you. A lot won't. A lot of them just say, you give me $25,000 retainer, and every month I'll send you a bill, and if it's less, and if you haven't spent it, you got to replenish the 25 every month. And those lawyers have a hard time getting business. And there are plenty of good lawyers around that understand the entrepreneurs and understand working with them. As I told you, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I work for myself, always have. Even with big law, I can assure you I work for myself. My kids all work for themselves. My boys both have MBAs, one from Wharton, one from Brigham Young. They both have very successful businesses. My daughter has her own business here in Charlottesville. She does very, very well. And I have another daughter that lives in Myanmar that has her own business. She's running an NGO. You would relate to her. Okay, she's in a very different business in cacao, but she lives over there, has been there 15 years.
Cool.
So that's a story you would love to hear. She's a wonderful woman and done very, very well. But again, she's into making life better for people in Myanmar.
Thanks.
Who else
Right.
has questions for Duane?
Let me just emphasize one more thing, and I can't tell you how important this is. It's really important you don't let people look at your technology. You know, it's really hard to hold on to it, even with NDAs. And it's just the way it is. People look at stuff, they will design around. I mean, I know that every time somebody files a patent, you know, there's somebody out there trying to design around it. If it's working and they're making a lot of money on it. And one of the most troubling aspects of that is patent litigation is so expensive. And it's expensive to file a trade secrets case too. Very, very expensive. Like I say, this case we were in, the plaintiff spent $14 million. We spent about $4 million, but the insurance company's money, you know, and it was just one of those, you had 10 lawyers on it and they just would consume 30 depositions, it just distract him to the very distracting to the entrepreneur who's trying to run a business, trying to get things going, trying to make payroll. And he's out there having had his deposition taken and worried about this case every day. So put yourself in a position where you never have to have that happen to you. And the only way I know how to do that is get good advice early on in the startup.
I see Graham's hand up.
Yeah, thank you so much for this, Duane. It's been really helpful. I'm curious if there is a network of B Corp lawyers or folks who advise specifically on social enterprise, and if it's the same sort of environment that you described more generally with the startup environment in Charlottesville.
Would you repeat that question? I think I got part of it. You're looking for a network of people
who advise specifically benefit corporations or social enterprises and have expertise in that space.
I'm not really familiar with who does and who doesn't. Like I said, most lawyers, people don't realize it. We get a skill set and we can apply them to virtually any set of circumstances. We all read the same books. We all read the same things. You know, there's no magic. Okay, the magic is how hard does a lawyer want to work for you? How much time is he willing to spend for you? And how educated is he willing to get? And what kind of a strategist is it? Okay, and let me tell you a little bit about lawyers, just so you know. Lawyers do 4 things. It's very, very simple. One thing they do is they manage process, and they're very good at that. And good lawyers have a couple of paralegals in their office, like we do, that manage process. You don't want to be spending hundreds of dollars on managing process. So the paralegals do a really good job of that. The second thing we do, and interestingly enough, is we gather information. We understand we have to know everything about everything, or we can't function, because the last thing you want is the Perry Mason story where they didn't ask the right questions. Somebody gets on the stand and your whole case gets destroyed in 2 minutes. Okay, that's the second thing. Now that most clients could do themselves, but they don't. They don't understand it. You know, the lawyers don't want you to decide what documents to look at or what documents to give. They just want to see them all, and then they can figure it out from there. The third highest value is advocacy. Lawyers that litigate. I litigated the early part of my career because I felt it was part of my professional development. I needed to understand the litigation process. And so I did litigate for a number of years, but the business practice will not permit a litigator to be their business lawyer, because litigators don't have any time. They are far too busy. They get tied up in trials and they last for weeks and weeks and weeks. And the business guy sitting there saying, blah, 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 where's my lawyer? And the highest value of a lawyer is his ability to counsel, his ability to help you and teach you and give you advice that's going to make your business better and more successful. And it's going to avoid the pitfalls of the legal system. Okay, so I'm a firm believer in thinking up front and figuring out up front how you avoid the pitfalls that come along. And it's just like I was commenting to a client the other day when we did a very complicated buy-sell agreement with him and several partners. And I said, I've been practicing law for 53 years and I've never had one of my buy-sell agreements litigated. Okay. Because you do them right the first time and then everybody's locked in. You know, there's no place for anybody to go.
Right.
Oh, you know, it's a dispute resolution part, because when you have partners, you're going to have disputes. People are going to want to leave, or they're going to want to do other things. And you've got to anticipate, paint those things and draft around those issues so that they don't result in fights. Because the last thing an entrepreneur needs is a fight. We want to build businesses. We don't want to fight with people.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Duane. Really appreciate you coming in and sharing of your experiences. I know it's hard to encapsulate all of your experiences and everything you've seen in 20 minutes, but
just got
we really
lucky.
appreciate your efforts doing that.
I've done about 20 here, and I was inspired to talk about the ones I talked about.
Great. That's awesome. Well, if you are okay with putting your email address or something like that in the chat, people can reach out to you if they have any more questions, or
It really is
you'll
just
also,
our website is zoblaw.com, zoblaw.com.
awesome.
My
and
email
then
is
Duane,
there. My email is there, and my cell phone number is there. So I'm available 24/7.
awesome. And then you'll be in the breakout room for a half an hour too, so people can come and chat with you there. So let's transition into announcements just to keep things moving. I'll start with our co-hosts. So we can start with, I saw Carolina right here with CIC, if you'd like to share and give any announcements.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Esther, and thank you, Duane, for that. CIC, I don't have any specific announcements, but I can tell you a little bit of the organization. So we are a nonprofit, and we offer a 16-week entrepreneur workshop. We actually are going to start the second cohort. Not the second cohort. I think it's going to be the 15th, I believe, in August. But if you know of anyone who would be interested in participating, we always have, we have 2 during the year, so you can send them my way. I'm happy to put my information down and our organization's website. But yeah, we basically assist entrepreneurs in the Charlottesville area, Albemarle, and local region. We provide them with through the workshop, they learn on how to run a successful business. So I'm going to put my information there and the website in case you want to learn a little bit more about it. Thanks.
Awesome. Craig, would you like to share for CBIC?
Sure. Craig Honig from CBIC Charlottesville Business Innovation Council. A couple things. I think we mentioned this last time, and it's kind of a little bit of a tease because you can't see it yet. We're building something called the Hub CVA for Region 9 in Virginia, which stretches from here all the way up to Farquhar County. And it is going to be like a connector engine for the region for businesses in primarily innovation, tech businesses, but all kinds of businesses are going to participate, including service providers. And look for that in July. Right now we have the alpha going, and we're working on it and ironing out some things, but it's very, very exciting. So it's a place where you're going to be able to go, just sign up, put your business in, and be able to automatically connect with all kinds of become aware of and connect with all kinds of other resources and businesses and events in the region. So look for that. It's called the Hub CVA. Something coming up, which is exciting, and in person, Tech on Tap, July 13th at 3 Notch Brewery at Ixart Art Park. That's going to be, I think, our first in-person event that we've had since the pandemic. And so you can go to our website, cvilleinnovation.org. If you're on our list, you're probably getting some in our newsletter and other emails about it, or you can just show up. July 13th, I think it begins at 5 o'clock at 3 Notch. Also, just as a preview, our gala this year is going to be in September, and we've got some exciting new additions to it. The week of September 13th, we're adding a golf tournament. For those of you who are interested in that, at Glenmore. And we plan the gala. It's going to be on Thursday. We believe it's going to be the following Thursday. We're still ironing that out. It could be the Thursday prior to the golf tournament. And also, we may be having an event at the new code building So kind of like a 3-part gala. It's going to be very exciting. So just want you to keep an eye out for that, and you'll see that in our newsletter and anything else we put out.
Awesome. Thank you, Craig. And I don't know if I saw anyone from the SBDC. Do we have anyone representing the SBDC? No. So their website is CV for Central Virginia, cvsbdc.org, I believe, but lots of really great resources and programs that they do. So really phenomenal organization. And I don't think there's anyone here from the Batten Institute either. I know David Toohey emailed me that he was going to be unavailable teaching some international class. So, but we're very grateful for their sponsorship as well. So I believe that's it as far as hosts and whatnot. So now I can open the floor. Are any of your companies hiring? You can make announcements there. Or are there any upcoming events, kind of like what you've heard us share about, any upcoming events that you'd like this entrepreneur community to know about? Anyone hiring?
Anyone firing?
Hey, this is Graham again. We are hiring a client concierge position at ArcWise Wealth. I have a couple of candidates in the pipeline, but if you know others who would be great, it's a fun place to work. And I'll put my email in the chat if.
Yeah, Graham, tell us what ArcWise is.
Okay, ArcWise Wealth is a locally owned financial planning company. We provide advice to families across generations and to small business owners.
Okay.
Awesome.
All right. So you want to do breakout rooms, Hope?
Yeah, let's do that. So Esther will be in one breakout room and Duane will be in the other. You should be able to self-select into a breakout room. And also once you're in a breakout room, if you hit leave a breakout room, it'll bring you back to this main room, which we will keep open until 10. Just keep an eye on the time. I'll try not, last time I just cut everyone off at 10. I didn't mean to do that. So we'll try to give you a warning, but I can't promise, but I'll try. But they do close around 10.
If you get suddenly cut off at 10, that's what happened.
that was Hope ending the meeting. And we'll keep the main one open if anyone wants to stay in here and just chat here. And we will be back here the 3rd Tuesday of July, which is probably like the 20th, somewhere around there, from 8 to 10 a.m. And I don't know who the speakers are yet. I think I do have someone lined up for the early stage, but not the crash and learn yet, but I will. And I'll always open to ideas of both early stage companies and crash and learn, because I'm successful in keeping her asleep. And my email is ce2@cvilleinnovation.org for any of those ideas. And we will go ahead and go to the breakout rooms now. And I'll stay in.
Getting in, let me know. We'll assign you there.
We'll be here to guide. Yeah, we can move you to the breakout room. I think there's a certain update that you need on your Zoom to move yourself. So if you can't, we can move you.
Okay, very good. And Duane, I think is Duane over there? Yeah, Duane. I think there we go. He's in there. Okay, very good. So Esther's in her room and Duane's in his room.
Hope, she's so precious.
Yeah.
Thank you. I was trying to keep her out of camera, but it wasn't working. Like she fell asleep and I was like, my arm was getting heavy.
Can you remind me of her name?
Alani, A-L-A-N-I.
Alani.
I don't know. She's looking at the fan, I think, right now, but I might as well shoot the lake. So I guess I can show you guys.
Yeah, she's adorable.
Thank you. She's supposed to be sleeping, actually, so she's less adorable to me right now.
She's less adorable.
Oh.
When baby's supposed to be sleeping, she's awake.
Be nice to that baby.
I know she's cute.
Oh. Well, great. Well, jumping off the breakout rooms, but thank you, Hope, and thank you, Craig, for this.
Sure, Carolina.
Mentioned you have a speaker for early stage next month?
Yeah, so I talked to, did you have
No,
anyone
no,
that you were talking
no,
to?
I don't have anyone. No, but
I talked to Molly with Sidecar.
Oh, yeah.
She has, do you know that company?
Yeah.
So I think she's looking at July. She's not locked into July yet, but I think she's trying to do July. So I'll confirm.
Okay, perfect. Sounds good.
Yeah.
I will
Yeah.
keep on putting ideas in the spreadsheet for.
Please, yeah, for the subsequent months. The only month we don't do is December.